Hi everyone. What if I told you that you could practice any high-stakes negotiations before it happens with an AI partner that argues just as intelligently as your real counterpart? Most people walk into negotiations completely unprepared. They don't know the other side's argument, they haven't practiced their responses, and they end up leaving money on the table or missing crucial opportunities. Today, I'm going to show you how to build a negotiation partner tool using two AI agents that argue one against each other in realistic business scenario. By the end of this video, you will have a complete negotiation tool that help you negotiate better deals. Whether you're negotiating your next salary, closing a business deal, or working just on a contract terms, this tool will give you the edge you need. Let's dive in. Alright folks, so today we're going to talk about commercial property lease scenario. And just to give you a quick context, basically, we're going to rent out 2,500 square feet modern phase in downtown Seattle. We have some other terms like 3-year lease term, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be the context for the model. And then we're going to add two kind of players or two entities interest, basically, the one and the another, just to simulate a scenario how those two kind of AI agents or entities representing each of the sides are going to argue in favor of their own interests. In order to simulate this scenario yourself in a simpler setting, you may go to ChatGPT and actually have two separate chats and basically have two agents prompted specifically to represent one's interest and then resend the message replies from one chat to another chat. That's going to be time consuming and you'll need to redo this all the time. So I suggest we just build the system once in an 10. That's going to work for us, and then we can basically apply any type of scenario we want. And that's going to be pretty flexible. Start with the form submission. And here we're going to add a few things. So the first thing is going to be the context. So what we are negotiating about. The second is going to be first entity interests. So that's the information about the first negotiation partner. And then it's going to be second entity interests. So let me go interests, something like this. Okay, so let's actually save that and let's actually execute. So for the context, I'm going to use everything we have here. And the only thing I'm probably going to add the parking cost because I don't want to disclose the price they're looking to hit for the tenant and the landlord. I will prompt them specifically just so that, I want this to come up within the negotiation. I don't want to be like laid out on the table before even the negotiation starts. So let's actually take this context and let me go parking, $150 per place. Then we get first entity interest. For the first entity interest, I have it actually prepared right here. So we got the commercial property lease negotiation agent. So let's say this is going to be the landlord, and I'm going to just take these instructions for me. So we got a first entity agents. The only thing probably I'm going to change here is that Sarah Chan is not a commercial real estate agent, but it's going to be the landlord. So I'll go the property owner of a premium downtown Seattle because I want to talk directly. Well, yes, sometimes you're going to be talking directly to the owner. Sometimes you're going to be talking to real estate agent. Well, what I've encountered before is that if this agent is not actually a decision maker, what he's going to reply is basically, I'm going to talk to the owner, and there is no option to call owner for this agent, right? So I don't want it to kind of shift the responsibility to the owner. I want actually the AI to be responsible for its own decision and kind of represent the interest of the decision maker. That's why I'll leave here the property owner. And for the contra agents, we will be acting as a Marcus Rodriguez, basically founder of a growing digital marketing agency. Okay, and here we have described his kind of specifics. So in future, in other scenarios, if you're going to use that, I suggest you would basically describe what you actually have on the table from your side. So you're looking to, for example, you're going to negotiate the salary. You say, I worked with this company that many years, I do this and that, I deliver, here's my KPIs, here's my evaluation form from other employees or my managers, etc. So you basically lay out everything you actually have so that you can use that later on in the negotiations. If you don't know actually what are the things that you can use as a argument, you may actually talk to AI and actually ask. It will perfectly provide you with all the details you need to take into consideration. And if you know them, just ask AI to ask you questions basically what are the specific arguments I may use in order to improve my positions in the negotiation, and it will provide with plenty of questions that you may not maybe come up yourself. All right, so now we've got the submitted form, and I think if we double click, we've got all the entities right here. Basically, we're going to use 2 AI agents, and let's just use the standard AI node here. For the chat model, I'm going to use the OpenAI model. Let's actually stick to 4.1 model, which is a little bit smarter than the other ones. And I will need to add actually some memory so that they actually remember what they were talking about. Here we don't have the chat ID. You can just insert the random number, and I will use something like, let's actually use 20 messages. If they will have like a longer conversation, I want to make sure they actually remember what they started with, so that when we loop in the conversation, they don't start repeating themselves because they just forget what they were talking in the very beginning. Okay, and then we need to provide a system prompt. So for the system prompt, instead of helpful intelligent assistant, what we're going to use is basically first entity interests. And let's probably rename that. So this guy is going to be the Sarah Chen, and then there is Marcus Rodriguez. So I suggest we start with Marcus Rodriguez. So imagine a situation that there was a publication somewhere on social media that Sarah has created, and then apparently Marcus just came across there might be like an aggregator for such publications, so that Marcus came across and he decided to actually write. So he will be the first one to start, and let's actually add in the very end, if you do not have any reply from Sarah Chen, then greet her. Let's do if from the counterparty. Let's actually use the more unique way from the counterparty. Then greet them first and initiate the conversation about your topic. Okay. So then here we're gonna lay out the context, and we're gonna say reply from the counterparty. Okay, so that's what we're gonna add here. For the context, we get the context right here, so make sure to hit that expression. So the context is here. Reply for the counterparty, we're gonna add it a little bit later, and let's name actually this node Marcus Rodriguez. Or you can go just, second entity if that's easier, if we want to do kind of a unique way. So once we have that, what I want to do is I want to then follow the conversation, and following the conversation right here is a little bit hard. So instead, I will use the Slack channel to actually see what these people actually are talking about. So I'm going to go to Slack, and then we go to send a message basically. So here to connect to your Slack account, you will just you'll need to sign in. And same basically for the OpenAI right here. To connect to OpenAI, you will need an API key that you can get at openai.com. Then you log in, you go to API platform, and here you can find, if you go to your profile, you go to API keys, here you can create a new API key and use that. So once you have this, let's actually get back to our Slack. So we need to send a message, and I'm going to send a message in the channel. And for this one, I've got the channel name negotiation partner. And the message is going to be basically the reply from this entity. So let me quickly execute that step so that we can use dynamically that value later on for our Slack channel. All right, we got it. So let me go here and let me actually use this reply. Okay, perfect. So let's actually test that. Let's go to our Slack channel. Hello, thank you for sharing the details. Given about competitive marketing and climate, I want to be upfront about requirements and constraints. Okay, so too much information. Maybe we should say shortly. Let me go back here to the second entity and say, if you don't have any reply from the counterparty yet, let's do yet, then greet them first and initiate, and shortly, very shortly initiate the conversation. Let's start with something short, so that is close to real deal. All right, so then we're gonna copy paste this agent, And the cool part is that the model is going to be the same, so we don't need to change these things. What we need to change here is basically the context is going to be not the JSON output anymore, but we have to be a little bit more precise. So in form submission JSON context, reply for the counterparty. So now we have that. So we want to use the reply from the counterparty, and that's going to be the second entity. And for this guy, there are going to be instructions as the first entity interest, okay? And it will never be the first one, so we can erase these kind of settings. And what I want to use, I also want to use this reference because my second entity agents will be actually recalling back the second agent. Well, basically the other agent, and that's the name of the agent, is actually basically the first entity. Actually, it's not called like this, so we have to go first entity. I think now it should match exactly the same. So let me double check. So now it doesn't match. First entity. Let me check. Yeah, I think that matches perfectly. Item JSON output. Now it's shown in red, and the reason it's shown in red because, you know, the agent reply actually comes after, and then we need to make a look. Well, if we do it like this, what happens then? If we do it like this, then the problem, if we try to execute this node, for example, we get a problem because no path back to reference node, because this actually guy is referencing this reply, but it doesn't have it. So in order to avoid that, we will need to basically, for the first conversation, add a small code block that I will provide for you, and you will have the kind of this scenario down in the description to use later. Basically, the code block is going to check if there is any response from the first entity agent. If there is no, then it's going to be just blank output. If there is, then basically put this guy. We'll need to go to code and actually adds a little bit of code. So this is how the code is going to look, and you will just, you know, paste this in. And basically here, the only thing we need to check is this is going to be first entity name. I think that's the name of the block that we're actually using. And then we'll be able to actually double check that. So let me execute the step. And now we should get the empty output. And if we execute this step, of course, we, instead of the first entity item, now we're going to be referencing this output, because this output later on will be used for our context. Okay, and then there is this JSON context. It's not anymore JSON context, because JSON context only appears if the previous module is the module we're referencing. Now, between the form submission and, you know, the first entity agent, we have actually one more block, which is the code block. So instead of this one, we have to relink it again, and now it has the full name on form submission item JSON context. Okay, so those guys are greens, so everything is good. If we test it, potentially they should work. Okay, so we need to double check this guy again, because it's not on the first module, first reference module. And then that's why we go here and we say on form submission. Let me quickly double check. So this one on form submission, second entity, yes. Everything should be working just fine. For this one, we still can use the JSON output. And actually what we forgot to add another Slack message right here. So we got to the Slack message. Let's actually add that. So send a message to the channel that we had before, negotiation partner. And for the message text, we'll need to run these modules for us. So let's actually do that. So let's execute the step, and then we'll actually check if we get any results in our Slack channel. All right, so here we go. We got some results. I'm not sure if that's the right one. 255. No, that's the right one. Okay, cool. So we got this one. Let's actually run this module and see if we get any results. I'm not going to read the output right now. I'm just do the technical setting, and then we're going to observe the results once we set the whole thing up. Okay, so thank you, Marcus, for thoughtful and candid response. Okay, perfect. And then we're gonna send this. Oh, okay. In order to send this to Slack. Oh wow, I just broken the scenario. So we'll need to rerun the scenario again. This is very sad, unfortunately. Let me actually go here to executions, And let me copy this thing to editor. And then instead of message text, we actually going to use this text as a Slack message. Again, it's going to be JSON output, and that's just fine just because it's just the next block. What we need to do is, if we loop it to this guy, basically the problem is we will not receive the messages from the first entity. That's why we actually need to loop to this guy, because second entity actually references the output from the code block, not from the agent response. And in turn, the code block actually references the first entity response. So this agent responds and checks if it's empty or not empty. So it's going to be empty only for the first time when we initiate the conversation, but all the other times it's going to be full. Once we loop that, this system is actually going to be infinite. It's never going to stop. So if we want for the system to actually stop, we may add another agent that is going to actually identify if we have agreed on certain terms or not. So for this one, I can go system message. I'm actually copy paste the prompt so that it's a little bit faster. So you're an intelligent assistant. Your job is to analyze the deal and commercial property lease negotiation and identify if the deal was finalized or not. Your only job is to identify if the deal was finalized or not. The deal is finalized when you see both entities congratulate, say thank you, and move forward to signing the agreement without any other negotiations. So that's going to be the system prompt. And then for the entities, we're going to go first entity and second entity. So let's actually add the replies from the both agents right here so that I can use it as a reference. And let me go, so we get the first entity. Let me set this to expression. First entity and second entity. Let's see. One more thing that we need to use here, of course we need the require specific output format. So we need the structured output. Let's add actually a model. The model is going to be the same, so let's use 4.1. Let's use 4.1 for this purpose, and then we get this structured output parser. So instead of this guy, we're gonna use deal. So deal true. Okay, if it's true, then we're gonna go one way or another way. So let me actually go here and do another thing. So we may add actually a switch module. And the switch module will actually reference the output of the agent, and this agent is actually output either true or false. So if it's true, it's going to go and the deal is finalized. If it's false, then it's going to loop many times. So for this one, we will actually need to run the scenario. So let me actually go and run the scenario real quick. Actually, I can run it step by step. So that's going to be a little bit quicker. Okay, now we got it. Let's actually pin the data. Let me do this, save, and then we will need to unpin the data back. Let me pin this data again. I'm sorry, I have to pin it like this. Okay, well, this is pin data, and let's pin this data, and then we can run this guy. Because if I don't pin the data, I will rerun the whole blocks again. Okay, now we go. So the deal is false. Okay, that's good. And now here we can set the boolean is true. So now it's clear. So so this guy, if this guy is true, then we're gonna finalize the scenario. But if boolean is false, we're gonna loop in the scenario. So let's actually use the expression. Let's set the deal. Let's do it again. Okay, so if this is gonna finish the scenario, so we can leave it blank. If this is false, we're gonna go straight back to the code module. So we have this kind of quick system. Basically what it does again, you kind of submit the content that you want. This guy is actually checking if the first message is blank, and on the first try is gonna be blank. And this guy is actually greeting the other opponent, and then this one is actually start negotiating. And then we output the whole thing in Slack, and this agent is actually checking if the deal is made or they're still negotiating. All right, so as long as the system is up, let's actually test if the system actually works. And for this one, let me get back to the Slack channel. Let me delete the previous messages so they don't bother us. And I think we're ready to test. So let's actually test the workflow. And before we do that, let me unpin the whole data that we have, because that's going to confuse everything. And let's unpin the data here again. And let me actually use the context because that's going to be just faster. So we execute it again. So context is here. So first entity interests. And the first entity was actually the landlord. So the landlord was, the Sarah was the first entity. So let me go like this. The only thing, again, I'm gonna erase that she's in legend, but she's the property owner. And then we go to the second entity, who's gonna be Marcus. Okay, so Marcus is the second entity. And then we just hit submit. I hope everything works. Let's actually test that. So we can go to our Slack, and then we see, thanks you for getting creating and meeting me nearly all the way on key points. Sarah, I appreciate your effort to bridge the gap and put forward. Okay, thank you so much for a prompt positive reply. I will instruct our legal team prepare draft. Okay, they're working on a draft already. Let's actually use another key here. And let's rerun the scenario. Let me actually save all that. Let me go like this. And let me actually save all that. Okay, so we got the context. Okay, so let's actually rerun it again because I think it just picked up from the previous example. Just because. Or the ID. And I'll show you later what we have to do if that's going to be the case again. So first entity interest, and then we go for the second entity interest. All right, so we got the second entity interests. I hope we get everything. Let me double check. Long-term partnership. Hope so. Let's actually submit that and let's see what we got. So, and let me actually delete those previous messages that are quite confusing. Hello, and thank you for connecting with me regarding the office space down. I'm very interested in exploring potential lease agreement. Okay, so that's kind of looks like a start. All right, so what's going on here? Hello, thank you for your interest. Base rent, and then it provides with the base calculations, the fees. It's funny that it came out. It's funny that it came out with its own numbers. Okay, it provides some calculations, whatever they are. Too much information. Okay, but we'll see. Thank you for the detailed breakdown. Appreciate your transparency and willingness. And then again, thank you for full candid response. We appreciate. And then we start to negotiate different options. The option 1, option 2, option 3. Well, it already provided different options. Okay, let me actually see. Let's actually take a few minutes and see how they actually negotiate, and then we come back after we have some data. All right, so it looks like they've made a deal actually. Oh, there is a problem. What was the problem? The service is receiving too many requests from you. Okay, didn't get this one before. Something new, but well, that's fine. But anyways, I think we actually got to a deal because these guys have actually settled an appointment. Pretty nice. Well, you could actually go and read the whole thing. It's actually a lot of reading. What I would do instead, I would just copy paste the whole thing, and I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll tell it to summarize in bullet points the negotiations. Bullet points the negotiations above, actually below. Emphasize pros and cons of each party in the negotiations. Provide me with details what parties have agreed on. Price, lease term, other conditions. Okay. So, and then we just drop all the text down below so that we don't need to read the whole text. Let's actually ask ChatGPT to make a summary. So key agreements, lease size, 3 years, base rent, 3 options. So they agreed to year 1, 36, year 2, 38, year 3, 40. I think the initial was 42 square meters. Let's actually double check that. So the landlord wanted $42 per square feet, and they actually went down, so that's pretty nice. Okay, so there's parking, 2 spacing for the entire life, initial 3 year, no extra charge. So the tenant was able to negotiate down the 2 spaces and then negotiate down the prices. I think they wanted for 90,000. That was they requested. So the tenant wanted to go for 80,000, but the maximum budget was 90,000. So, okay, that's just, you know, kind of, they both had to sacrifice just a little bit because these guys wanted to go like 120, I guess, or 100. Let's actually double check real quick. So they wanted to have, they wanted 105. So they went down a little bit and this guy went down a little bit. I think that's actually pretty nice compromise. Tenant improvement, allowance, expansion rights, contraction rights for 18 months, early termination adoption. I mean, that's quite reasonable. I mean, they were able to negotiate the deal quite fast, to be honest. Some previous examples I was testing them on took a while they were agreeing on something. So pros and cons. Marcus, phase rent starts below market rate, easing initial cash flow, rent increases are predictable, fixed CAM, no surprises, and maintenance fee, free parking, significant value, allowance, flexibility, predictable cost, professional landlord is highly responsive and willing to tailor deal. Cons, rent climbs close to market rate by year 3, so wasn't able to negotiate that, but still below. Overall annual cost rise above initial cap, 3 months rent is substantial if exercised. Can only downsize by 500 square feet with admin fee. Sarah, so pros, long-term stable growth oriented, ultimately achieves market level rent by year 3, investment helps ensure tenant satisfaction, no rent, abatement after year 1, maintenance property premium, blah blah blah, below market rent. So pretty clear, but what each party did well and how they can improve. Let's actually clear about budget, maintain collaborative positive tone, Sarah transparent. What could be improved? Marcus could have further justified budget cap with market comparable, so longer term commitment for stronger leverage. Yes, and that's actually true. We didn't have any information about like other alternatives that might potentially use. Might have negotiated more aggressively on escalation rates on additional TI for later years. Sarah might have tied parking or TI allowance more closely to performance. Could have proposed a CAM escalation clause for longer term risk mitigation. And here's the final deal structure. The negotiation was collaborative, transparent, and creative. Well, if we were prompting this ChatGPT a little bit more, we could actually say, okay, so you're like a negotiation expert, you will need to do this and that. Just tell me how you can improve the position of Marcus, for example, to negotiate down the deal. Because here's how it actually went. Also, for the prompting itself, as we get back to our entities here, for example, we can actually add to the first entity, for example, in the very beginning, when we submitted a form that, you know, the Marcus is the best negotiator in the world. And I will be honest with you, I've tested it before launching the video. And when I prompted it to, as you're the best negotiator, and, you know, you can negotiate any deal to best possible options, he was able to actually negotiate better terms. So yeah, prompting sometimes matters, because now here we're talking about 2 different parties representing each and own interest. Doesn't actually mean they're good negotiators. So good negotiator will also mention that, hey, we're a pretty good tenant, you know, we are long-term oriented, we will pay on time, you know, and all that fluff that we kind of assume are by definition clear, but it's actually additional selling points. And yeah, basically this short sort of a system can actually help you prepare for your negotiations, because you can simulate like plenty of scenarios. You can run like, once you have it, you can actually go and rerun it again and run it again many times, then analyze it with ChatGPT or just read it yourself. And basically by like 10 runs, I think you can play out all the possible scenarios that can be, so that whenever you're gonna go on the market and talk to your real counterparts, you're actually not surprised because you already know all the scenarios. Of course, if you're in the industry, if you're working and you're a professional, you know, the negotiations are a kind of a daily part of the daily life, then you might actually not need it on a daily basis. But sometimes when there is like a bigger deal, that's actually a nice to have thing. I've actually came up with this automation after one of the clients actually requested to provide a more comprehensive training on the negotiations with AI agents for their employees, because they have to like buy stuff for in chunks and actually in bulk from the wholesalers, and then reproduce it and sell it further. So the price is actually a very, very sensitive thing that they talk about every single day, and it significantly eats up the margin. So they want to use AI to kind of negotiate better deals. And I think this sort of system can actually help you not only just go and manually play with AI, just, with prompting, but actually simulate the scenarios as many as you want and basically analyze it afterwards. And then having this in mind, you can also go and place with your AI counterpart and negotiate and talk to him and see how well you actually can do that. I will actually leave a link down in the description to kind of this scenario, so you can actually go and import the scenario into your N10 flow. How to do that? You have to sign in into your N10. Then I'm going to download this, and you will need to import from file. There will be like a JSON file that will need to input. And once you have it, you will have the whole scenario set up. The only thing you will need to do, you will need to connect to your OpenAI account. Basically, as I said here, you will need to connect to your API key, and you will need to connect to your Slack channel. All the rest will be done for you, so you can use it, and hopefully you can get better at your negotiations. And there you have it, a powerful AI negotiation tool, and that you can customize for any business situation you're facing. The key takeaway here: preparation wins negotiations, and AI gives you the perfect view of how it can potentially go. I've put all the system prompts and implementation details down on the description below, so you can start using this just right today. If you found this video valuable, hit that subscribe button. I share AI automations like this every week that can actually transform how you work. Want to take your business to the next level with AI? Check out flowby.ai. That's where we build custom AI solutions that provide real value for clients. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.